Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of TTM Talks, brought to you by Top Tier Motorsport, where we talk all things F1 and TTM. Sorry for the delay. There was a bit of a scheduling issue last week, but we are back. And joining me as ever, so I'm not waffling by myself, we have the lovely TTM Brenda
Hello.
and the equally lovely TTM Billy.
Hi there.
And this week we've got a jam-packed episode for you. We've got lots of news to delve into, speculate, and then we're going to be talking about the 2021 season, doing a little preview of it, giving our predictions on what we think will happen, and as well, we're recording on the night that McLaren are launching their new 2021 Challenger, so you'll have our live reactions from the car reveal. So hopefully
I might go a bit quiet during that point.
Yeah, hopefully we don't get too distracted by it, because I love new car season. But starting off, we have lots of news to unravel. Starting off with Hamilton and signing with Mercedes for another year, only a single year contract, with talks that it might be opened up to more years. Kind of inevitable that it was going to happen. But do you think it's interesting that he's only signed a 1 year deal?
Yeah.
I
I'll
mean,
let Brenda go first.
I do think it's interesting. Obviously, it's the last year before the new regulations come in, so they might be thinking that they only want Hamilton just until those new regulations do come in. And then they might want to bring in someone else. It's quite interesting because you think that if they were really sort of happy to keep Hamilton with the team, then they would sign a longer contract with him and keep him on for another couple of years, possibly like 3 or something. Um, or maybe there's some sort of there's something in the contract saying that like if he wins the championship, then he's more likely to get an extension or something. But yeah, I definitely do think it's interesting that it's only 1 year. A 7-time world champion. You think you'd want to keep them on for longer, but Mercedes, I don't think are too interested to keep him on after the new regulations come in.
Yeah, I know they've. I don't know if it's in his contract or it's just an agreement that they have that they. I don't know the specifics on it, but they're going to do like create a charity or something to help increase diversity, which is obviously something that F1 has tried to shed more light on, especially last year. And Hamilton's a great figurehead for that. So he's got plenty of things outside of F1 to do, but it's very interesting because I know I think they wanted to get the 2021 contract sorted before the start of the season because it's already really late, compared to everyone else having their contract signed. But it's weird that they didn't sign for 2 years because I don't know if I'm right, but I'm pretty sure this might be the only time Hamilton's had a 1 year contract. But don't quote me on that.
I honestly have no idea. I haven't followed it for long enough to know that.
Because I'm pretty sure at McLaren it would have been a multi-year, and then when he switched to Mercedes, it probably would have been another multi-year. Which is then interesting because they normally do the 1 year contract for like the Bottas, the second driver. But it does mean that as of right now, things will probably change in a couple of months' time. But as of right now, the 2022 seats are up for grabs at Mercedes. Do you think we're going to see a shock move? Because I've seen a lot of people being like, Max could go to Mercedes, or George could go to Mercedes. Do you think we're going to see a change of lineup from this year to next year?
Yeah, I do. I think it's almost guaranteed that George Russell will be in the Mercedes seat for 22. I can't see him staying at Williams for that much longer, even with the promise of going into obviously what is currently the strongest car. There's no guarantee that it would be when the new regulations come in, although with Mercedes being Mercedes currently, it's likely they will. But I can't see Russell sticking with Williams. If Williams were a stronger team like they used to be, and although they really improved last season, he might have just stuck with him until that seat opens. But I think he might start looking for new places if Mercedes don't promote him for 2022. So I think it's Mercedes have either got to do something with him or lose him for next season or following season.
Yeah, I don't think Bottas will be there next season. I think that's a definite, because especially with the change of regs, like Mercedes aren't just going to drop off, but I feel like they're going to want to have the best possible lineup they can going into these new regs. Whether that means, you know, you have a little bit of friction in the team, but you have two good drivers. Like, not saying that Bottas isn't good, but there are times where he's a bit of a pushover and he doesn't really compare with Hamilton. Whereas if you have two like really good drivers, it probably helps your championship challenge a little bit. I've seen a lot of people saying about Verstappen going to Mercedes, because I didn't actually know this, but in 2014, this was before the year before Verstappen joined F1. He was I don't know if he was approached or he approached both Red Bull and Mercedes to join like their junior programs. But the only reason that he chose Red Bull was because they could guarantee that he'd be in the Toro Rosso next year, whereas Mercedes couldn't. Because I think at that time they didn't have like that strong connection with, you know, Racing Point and Williams that they do now. Didn't have that like sort of sister team.
Yeah. Well, in 2014, Bottas would have still been in the Williams, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he was. He was in the Williams for another 2 years after that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very interesting that, you know, Mercedes obviously want him, but yeah, I don't see Max going there. I think he's at the moment quite happy with Red Bull. I think it would have to be maybe at the end of 2022 that he goes. I know in our Discord, M still shout out to him. He was a guest the other week when we did the Tier 2 review. He mentioned this, and that maybe I think he's got a contract thing in his a clause in his contract, Verstappen, that if his car's not performing, he can leave. So maybe at the end of 2022, if Red Bull haven't taken full advantage of these new regulations that we're going to get, he could be off to Mercedes.
Well, it depends how everyone fares through the regulation change. Obviously, Mercedes have been quite good at being able to get through the changes and carry on that dominance. But you know, in an extreme circumstance, Mercedes could theoretically go from the best car on the grid to the absolute worst, which, you know, would be quite interesting. And I think, you know, changing the driver lineup completely would be quite good as well. Um, Obviously, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they've had um, oh no, maybe not in when Hamilton joined. Oh no, they've had a world champion like on the team all the time, like since they bought Brawn at the end
Yeah,
of 2009. They've had a world champion on the team ever since.
yeah, because it
I
was
think
obviously
that's right.
Schumacher before, and then Hamilton joined.
Yeah, yeah. So I think bringing in sort of that new talent and giving another sort of young shot a chance, or possibly two, and just letting them sort of battle it out would be quite good to see from a fan's perspective. But you never know what's going to happen through the regulation change.
Yeah, exactly. How peak would it be if George Russell goes from the best car on the grid to the worst car on the grid to the best car on the grid, so moves up to Mercedes, and then Williams find like a double diffuser thing like Braun did, and then they become the fastest car on the grid, and you know,
And Latifi world
yeah,
champion.
you got Latifi winning like 5 championships in a row, and George is now goes from the worst car to potentially thinking he's going to win championships, and then he's stuck at the back of the grid. I can just feel like that's George's luck. But moving on to some other news. This is less Formula One related, but we've had the news that Grosjean is going to go to IndyCar and do a few races there. I know with IndyCar they have like their road circuits, they call them, and ovals. And I think he's going to do a select few races, which is obviously good to get him back in the car. And I think as well at some point he's going to drive the 2020 Mercedes. I know Toto Wolff was big on trying to get him in the car to give him a proper F1 send-off. And we've also got Magnussen joining Peugeot's Le Mans and World Endurance Championship team. So it's good to see past F1 drivers moving on to different things. What do we think? I mean, I don't know how much of a fan you two are of IndyCar or World Endurance racing. Do you think they can translate their F1 talent into talent in those series?
I've watched some Le Mans. I haven't really watched a lot of IndyCar, if I'm honest. So I couldn't say how that will go for Grosjean. I have no idea sort of style or the harshness of the racing in that series. But for Le Mans, I feel Magnussen could do quite well in that, based on his driving style and sort of everything I've seen from him in F1. It'd be nice to see him go on and do something after the way that he's left F1.
Yeah, because I feel like Magnussen came into F1, first race, gets a podium, and he's, everyone's like, oh my god, this is Hamilton all over again, because it was with McLaren at the time. And then he's just had, the 2014 McLaren wasn't that great. Then he, I think, had a year out when Fernando came over to McLaren, and then he joined Renault, and then Haas, and I feel like he is a decent driver. He's just never been given that decent car to show how good he is.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it does happen sometimes with drivers in F1. Is that they can be given the chance in like a top team at the time, and then like McLaren did, just sort of they start to slip and sort of start falling down the field, and then they sort of start scrambling to get around and find a seat. Sort of like Ricardo, I wouldn't say scrambling for Ricardo because he's kind of moving around, but I think that ever since he left Red Bull, he's obviously been trying to find a team that can match and beat Red Bull. He thought at the time it was Renault, and then McLaren went ahead and just had two straight, really good years with fourth and then third in the championships. So he's decided to move to there. I think Ricardo just a bit lost to a team at the moment, and that might be the same problem.
Yeah, I think I think, well, on the Ricardo point, I think now he's at McLaren. I feel like he's going to have do good things with them, which we'll touch on in a little bit. And obviously, IndyCar, it's great for Grosjean to be back in a car. I'm presuming he's probably not going to do the ovals, seeing as they're like consistently high speed, and if you crash, it's like a big crash. But I've watched a little bit of IndyCar. It's quite enjoyable because they're all everyone's got the same car, so it's all down to driver talent, really. I think he can do pretty well in there. In F1, he kind of had this energy around him that he was a bit of a crash magnet sometimes, but then sometimes he would pull out worldy drives. I remember one in particular was Belgium 2015 when he got a podium in a Lotus that really shouldn't have been on the podium. 2015 was their Mercedes year, so they weren't too bad, I don't think. But yeah, I think he could do well there. But obviously, with them only doing a select few races, he's not going to be fighting for championships or whatever. And then moving on to our next bit of news, we had Alonso being involved in I don't know if you'd call it a road traffic accident, but he was on his bike in Switzerland, got knocked off. I think he broke his jaw or fractured his jaw. But he's going to make full recovery. not like substantial injuries that are going to hamper him in any way. So it's not really a talking point, just something to mention. Obviously, we wish him a speedy recovery. But now onto some 2021 news. We have the return of Portimao. There was obviously a to-be-confirmed race taking Vietnam's slot, and it got confirmed last week that Portimao is back. What do we think about this? Do we like Portimao last year?
I mean, yeah, it was very interesting, especially the start. Everyone not really being able to get away, especially the Mercedes, who I believe started on the mediums, and then you had the McLaren of Sainz, who started on the softs. He was just absolutely rapid at the start, was just able to climb his way up through the field and just take the lead and just snatch it away from the two Max and sort of drive away. Kimi as well, showing all of his experience in Formula One to be able to just pick his way through up to, I think it was sixth, seventh or sixth, and showing that he's still got that talent there. Obviously, it was sort of their first time racing on that track, so it might not be the same, but I feel like if it delivers that kind of racing again, which was amazing to watch at the time, it'll be a really good addition to the calendar.
Yeah, that first lap from Kimi was one of the highlights of last season. And it gets compared a lot to Spain and how it's a better Spain track. So I think it should give some good racing. Obviously, I think it was Gasly and Perez towards the end of the race last year having a right little battle. So I'm excited to see it on the track. I think it's out of all the tracks we got last year, apart from Turkey, because Turkey was obviously, an anomalous race with there being no grip. I think. Oh, I'm borrowing short. I think Portimao was definitely up there in the top 3 of the new circuit, so it's good to see it back. And just to touch on as well, Spain has had a change. I don't know if any of you have seen this. I'm trying to think how to explain it. Basically,
Yeah, it's been reprofiled. The end of the sort of second, is it the second DRS straight?
yeah, it's like end of sector 2, beginning of sector 3.
Yeah,
And out of all the parts of that track to change, you could add back in or take out the chicane at the end of the lap. That might improve overtaking, but no, they take out one of the heavy braking zones, so there'll be even less overtaking at Spain. Which I'm not thrilled about, but I feel like it's probably a MotoGP thing that they've done it for.
uh, yeah, it's more popular with MotoGP, I think.
Um,
It's more of a sort of longer banked curve. It's sort of like, isn't it like the outside track that was already there? They've sort of
yeah,
like shifted it forwards.
yeah, it's. I think it's the same profile as the outside bit. It's just shifted forwards, which I don't really know why they thought to do it, because it's just gonna. I mean, that last sector is single file anyway. I don't think you're gonna really get people going side by side through there.
Probably not.
But who knows? We might see a insane overtakers. Someone proves us wrong. And more 2021 news. I know the FIA had a little conference meeting last week to discuss a few things, and one of the things they discussed was trialing sprint races. And it got a pretty overall positive support. So I think they're gonna look into it more and try and work out the logistics. But for those of you who don't know, they're going to do trial races at Canada, Monza and Brazil. And how it will work, roughly, is they'll have a qualifying session on the Friday, which will then set a grid for a sprint race on Saturday, which will be like a 30% race. The top 8 from that, or the finishers from the top 8 finishers from that will get points, but it'll be like reduced points. And the results from that race will then set the grid for the actual Grand Prix. So no reverse grids like they do in F2. But do we like this idea of a sprint race, or is it not F1's DNA. I know some of the more traditional fans will say it's not in F1's DNA.
I'm really looking forward to it. Ever since I started up watching F1, I've been watching F2 alongside, and I've loved the F2 format of the two races. It makes the weekend so much more. I don't want to say exciting, but there's so much more to play for. Because obviously, if you're out in the first race, you haven't just left the weekend with no points. So you tend to see a driver just go full on with it for the second race, trying to regain what they've lost from the first one. But in F1, you might see Mercedes thinking, well, we're not desperate for those points. We're not going to go full out and ruin our Sunday race for the major points, which might give some of the smaller teams a chance to build some points, really improve in the midfield.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good thing. I'm a little bit disappointed that they've kind of like ruled out reverse grids. I know there was one interview where Hamilton and Vettel got asked about reverse grids, and they thought it was an absolutely rubbish idea. But I feel like that's just because they're front runners; they want to be at the front. Whereas, I think even a reverse grid to some sort of standard, whether it's like F2 where it's just the top 8 reversed or whatever, I think that would be really exciting. Because then as well, the one big issue that we have is cars can't follow each other. But if you then have mandatory reverse grid races, the teams will have to design cars that can follow each other, so it solves the problem, or in theory should solve the problem.
Yeah, that's sort of. I think Mercedes, their one drawback with that car is that it is highly dominant when it's at the front, but when it's caught in the midfield, and we saw it with Bottas quite a lot. When it was caught in between cars, it would start to overheat, and it wouldn't be as quick as it would if it was at the front. They wouldn't be able to pull away. It would just sort of be able to catch the car ahead and then have to like back off because it was overheating. Um, so yeah, I think like you say, they would have to design it to sit behind another car, which would completely sort of change the grid up, and we might see a midfield team rise to the top a bit, like I think McLaren are doing at the moment. They're going from like midfield to top of the midfield, and now they're starting to get closer and closer to that podium position. Um, so yeah, I do like the idea of the sprint races. I think it would be a very cool idea to do. However, if on the Saturday race, um, you're battling for the lead, and then there's an accident and both of you retire, you've lost first and second, and now you're at the back of the grid. So I think in that respect, it is a bit unfair because something that might not even be you might even get like a puncture per se, which you wouldn't really see in qualifying, but you could see during a race, and it would just ruin your chances for the the actual race on the Sunday.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons because like with that, you know, it could happen to anyone as well. So it's not like if you're at the front, you're gonna have this detriment. It could be, it could happen to anyone. But I think it's good that they're trialing races. I think it's Stefano Domenicali. He used to be a Ferrari team boss. I don't know if he's head of FIA or he's like one of the. I think he took over from Chase Carey when he retired last year or the year before. And it's good that F1 is looking at ways to make the sport fresh. I know there's obviously those hardcore fans who'd be like, no, qualifying's on Saturday, race on Sunday, that's it. But I think it's good that as well that they're not just going blindly and being like, we're doing sprint races at every weekend. I think because before they've made these rash changes where whether it's elimination qualifying that we had in 2016 or back in the day in 2005 they ruled out tyre changes, so you had to do a whole race on one set of tyres, or you had aggregate qualifying, and then they turn out to be not so good. So I think having these tester weekends, if you like, is a very good idea. And I think they've been clever about, or at least they've been switched on about what tracks to do it at. You know, it would be rubbish if they did a sprint race at Monaco, because you're just probably going to get the same result as you do on a Sunday. Whereas at least, on a Sunday, whereas at least at Canada, Monza, and Brazil, you can overtake. And then this leads us on to the final thing that was discussed in the little conference was an engine freeze. Now this is vital for Red Bull, because at the end of this year Honda is leaving, and they'd be left without an engine. I don't think they could go to Mercedes, because I think an engine supplier is only allowed to supply 4 teams, and they're already doing that with obviously Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Williams. Ferrari probably wouldn't give them an engine, and then that means they would have to go back to Renault. But now with this engine freeze, no development until 2025, which is when the new engines come in. So Red Bull basically could take over the manufacturing of the engine, but just not the development. And alongside this as well, we've had news come out that Mercedes supposedly have engine issues, which is crucial as well, because obviously you need to have your engine sorted by the end of this year, and you're not allowed to update it throughout the year. So if you have a rubbish engine this year, or update your engine for next year and it's rubbish, you're then stuck with that engine for 3 years. But
yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going on with Mercedes. I haven't heard anything of that. But Red Bull were a bit stuck when Honda decided to pull out of F1. Obviously, Mercedes, if they're not allowed to supply an engine to them, I don't think they would anyway, because Red Bull are their closest rivals at the moment. I think the engine or their power unit is something that Red Bull are lacking a little bit. So giving them, like, their powerful engine and letting them sort of get closer to them is not something that they want. And they wouldn't want a Ferrari engine either, because that's been proven to be slower than, well, it's the slowest power unit at the moment. And then obviously they wouldn't go back to Renault, and I don't think they wouldn't get, or they wouldn't be able to have Renault engines. Like, Renault wouldn't sell the engines to them, so they were really sort of stuck. So they are lucky, I think, that they've had this sort of engine freeze that saved them for like another 4 years, to sort of figure out when the new engines come in, like what they're gonna do.
yeah, because the new engines in 2025 are supposed to be a lot cheaper than they are at the moment, to hopefully sort of encourage new engine manufacturers to come in. And yeah, with the Mercedes engine issues, it's nothing like concrete. I'm pretty sure every year, they come out and say, "Oh, our engine's terrible," and then go and win pretty much all the races in the season. So it's just typical Mercedes propaganda. But I think that wraps up everything in the news. I don't think there's anything else that's happened. So let's get into the main topic of today, which is the 2021 season. So obviously we're supposed to have the new regs this year with the new exciting futuristic looking cars. They got delayed because of the worldwide pandemic. So they decided to carry over basically last year's car to this year. And originally they were going to keep the same tyres as they used last year, which was actually the 2019 tyres. And because, we saw at Silverstone the tyres on the Mercedes and Sainz's tyre explode, they decided to try and cut downforce to help with this tyre stress. So basically, the changes that are happening next year is they've got diagonal cuts in the floor, so they can't have any of these like holes that you saw. It's to try and reduce the seal that the floor has. The diffuser's been changed. There's some strakes that are inside it that have been or had their height reduced. The winglets on the rear brake ducts have been shortened to all try and reduce downforce. So I think they're supposedly being taken back to 2019 levels of downforce, but teams will always regain probably a bit more than that. And then on top of that all, they decided, no, we are actually going to produce a new tyre for this year, which is more durable. Do we think these changes are actually going to do anything to the pecking order?
I hope so. I'm not sure how it would affect. Maybe it might help Ferrari. But obviously, they worked well on Turkey last year because Turkey was a track that really used the tyres and needed. And obviously, the Ferrari car last year was working its tyres quite hard, so they seemed to really benefit from that. So it'd be nice to see more teams at the top rather than them dropping down.
Yeah, I think as well, I've seen conflicting things. Some people think it will affect Red Bull more because of their high rake concept. So if you don't know what high rake is, it's basically where the rear of the car is higher than the front of the car. And then I've seen other people who say, oh no, it's going to affect Mercedes more because they have, rather than having a high rake, Mercedes have a very low rake. So I think only time will tell who it affects. But interestingly, we saw some teams last season try these new changes. I think we had McLaren in Belgium tried a new floor. Ferrari had tried it out. Red Bull, I can't remember if anyone else did. But do you think having that real world data will help them? Because Mercedes didn't do any Mercedes stopped development last year fairly early on. I think it was Belgium was their last update. Basically all to work on this year's car. But they never did any like real on track running. Do you think that will hamper them at all?
Probably not, to be honest. I think Mercedes have the resources, and data to be able to help them out and make sure that this doesn't affect them too much. Obviously, the other teams that have got that on-track data that is solidified, and they can say, this is helping, or this is the outcome of this specific part, is going to help a lot. I think the outcome will be a more condensed field, which I mean, we had a really close midfield last year, and then obviously you had Mercedes and Red Bull out in front, and then from about McLaren back to with Racing Point, Renault, those three were very close on pace, and depending on what track, you also had like the Ferraris who got involved, the Alfa Tauris, and that was kind of it. But that's like 4 or 5 separate teams all battling for like that top 10, those top 10 positions. I just hope that them sort of taking that time to develop for this year does create that more condensed field, and it sort of cuts the Mercedes dominance a little bit, so that Red Bull have a chance at sort of stopping them as well as any other team that masters it.
Yeah, I kind of think as well the fact that they're changing tyres now, I think that might be the biggest factor that affects performance, because obviously all the teams have got loads of data on the tyres that they were using last year, they were using them the year before, and I think that's something that Mercedes got on top of. I think that was maybe one of their downside in previous years that they didn't really understand the tyres, and I think they nailed that down for last year and the year before. And I think now going to a different compound, only getting 3 days of testing as well, which is no time at all really compared to what they had last year. I think last year they had like 8 days. So I think that's really going to mix things up. There are a few other changes as well. There's minimum weight increase, weight of the power unit is increased as well to reduce the need for like exotic materials. The wastegates, so if you've seen the rear view of a car, they're sometimes called like the Mickey Mouse ears. If you've got the exhaust, you've got the 2 little wastegates above. They're no longer needed. They can go like inside the exhaust, although I imagine a lot of teams will keep it because, I mean, I'm not an aerodynamicist, but I think it helps like seal the diffuser or something to give them more downforce. No DAS, so that was Mercedes pulley and pushy steering wheel. That's gone. Green materials are permitted, so I think this is a big push from the FIA to try and get F1 a bit greener. So I think basically you could use like recycled materials to make parts of the car. I know they did I think it was with hemp, they made like a front wing sort of crash structure, and it passed the FIA safety regulation, so it's strong enough to use, but it's just like 5 times the weight of a carbon fibre front wing. So I think this is just the start of F1 going more sustainable, which is always good. And then finally a clamp down on the quote-unquote pink Mercedes, or this copying that was going on last season. I think at the moment you can obviously copy ideas, but you can't have like designs given to you or anything like we had with Racing Point. So let's move on to talking about the teams. We're going to go through the teams and their constructors' orders from last year. Basically give our thoughts on where we think they're going to come, how their drives are going to do, and just how their season is going to go. So starting off with Williams, I'm going to give the floor to you two. How do you think the Williams is going to do this year?
I'm going to go for a bold prediction and say they're going to finish 8th in the constructors this year.
That's very interesting because that is also my prediction.
Oh, okay. I hope it's true, but yeah, it is a bold prediction for me because most of mine is sort of dependent on Ferrari not really solving their engine issue as much as people think they're going to or hope they're going to, and Williams also using all the new development and money they've had from being taken over, and really also like Jenson Button coming on board as an advisor and stuff like that, and just really pushing that car as far as it can go with the money available.
Brenda, what do you think Williams will achieve this year? Or are you not quite as optimistic as me and Billy?
No, I think we have said this before. I think they are on the up. Whether they are that much, I have no idea. I think they will score points at least a couple of times, mainly with George Russell, but I think Latifi could nab a few points as well. And like Billy said, it's sort of dependent on the Ferrari power unit, which they say they've upgraded, and it is pushing out a lot more than it was last season. Obviously, that if that is the case, then it's going to make it a lot tougher for Williams. But yeah, like Billy said, with Button coming on board with all of his experience, it's looking good for them. And I do want them to return to the midfield and score podiums again. I think they deserve it. They've spent a long time away, regarded as like the worst car on the grid, and they deserve to be sort of back on the rise and getting points again. Obviously, they were so close in 2020, and I just hope that and they've got the new ownership, which has increased their resources in regards with like money and things like that. They've got a lot more to work with, I think, now, and I just hope that they can make their way up the grid. So eighth is a bold prediction, but I think I would agree. I think they're going to be between that sort of 8th to 10th mark.
Yeah, put it this way, I don't think they'll be last like they have been for the past few years. Like you said, I do think George will score the majority of the points. I know this year last year, I keep saying this year. Last year they only had 2 real chances, which was Tuscany, Mugello, and Imola. Where I think Russell was in the points in Mugello, and because of a safety car and a red flag and having to start back on the grid, Vettel overtook him, and obviously Mugello, not Mugello, Imola, he spun behind the safety car. I think with the progress that they made from 2019 to 2020, I don't think they're going to be midfield cars by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like they're at least going to be battling with Alfa Romeo over that 8th position. So I do think George is going to score some points. Latifi, I think, is going to have to take a crazy race, crazy circumstances for him to score points. But I think the trajectory that they've been on. Obviously, a lot of the teams will be looking, especially the lower down ones, will be looking at 2022 for that big sort of gains. But yeah, I think for the first time they won't be, first time in a while anyway, they won't be last in the constructors. Which brings us on to Haas, which I do think will be last in the constructors. Obviously, with Haas and Alfa Romeo, it's a bit dependent on the engine. But for me personally, I don't know about you guys, with their lineup, it's all new faces. I think don't get me wrong, I rate Schumacher, but I know before in previous series it takes him a year to sort of get his feet, and then he starts showing that sort of, I don't want to say Schumacher genius because he is still very young, but showing that talent. And yeah, then you've got Mazepin, who everyone knows how I want to say bad Mazepin is, because even a racing driver, he's obviously done bad things, but even his racing style is so aggressive. I feel like if he ever gets into that sort of position where he can score points, he'll go for a move and just like bin on someone because he's so aggressive.
Yeah, he'll do anything to maintain that. I think with, like you said, Schumacher, I think he's going to take a year, half a year to a year, just to find his feet, get up to speed with everyone else. That fresh lineup is going to be a bit difficult, especially in terms of R&D, because they haven't got the experience. They're not going to be able to tell engineers like what is specifically wrong with the car. Obviously, if they don't know, they might know, but if they don't know, in comparison to someone who's been doing it for years, like Kimi, who can definitively say like, this is the problem, this is what we need to change. I think it is going to be difficult for them, and with Mazepin in the car, I think they're probably going to lose more money than they gain, because his driving style is so aggressive, and any sort of chance that they do have to get a good result, I think is going to be ruined by that.
Yeah, I'd agree. Maybe even psychologically, it could be ruined by it as well. Just having that sort of that feeling that that there's a lot of people out there that don't want someone in a car that you're running. I feel that if there's a lot of people that are expressing that even as the season goes on, I'm not saying it would affect them, but it might slowly start to reduce the sort of the impact that bringing in that money would have.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. Anything that has put out, especially if Mazepin is in it, on like Twitter or Instagram, all of the comments are just "We say no to Mazepin." Like I honestly don't know how like the media is just gonna like rip them apart for having him as a driver. And I feel as so with the Schumacher thing. It's obviously I think it's good that he's in that sort of lower level car where it's not quite got so many eyes on him. So you can sort of get into the swing of things. Because I think when he gets started, he'll be good. But then if he's racing Mazepin, because that's the only person he can race, or the only person who's around him, I feel like Mazepin, they might have a fair few collisions. Because Mazepin will be like, no, I'm the top dog. Schumacher who, and just try anything to be the top dog there. Also, have you heard? Again, this is just a rumor. But apparently, Haas have got a bit of an issue fitting their engine, and that the Ferrari engine doesn't fit their chassis that they've got.
Okay, that's it. I hadn't heard that. No,
I mean,
interesting.
I only saw it on one of these
Sim.
like Instagram pages that I don't know. It's probably not very very reliable, but apparently because they've obviously Dallara make their chassis, and I think they used to make it over in America, but they've got a factory in England now. And I think they were transitioning where they were making stuff from, and potentially their engine doesn't fit as expected, which is already a bad sign. So I think they're gonna. I wouldn't be surprised if they go pointless, because obviously I think the only points they scored last year was Hungary with. It might have been both of them. Obviously making
I know
that.
Magnussen was definitely in the points in Hungary. It was the strategy at the start, wasn't it? Because it was a wet start, and a few of them dived into the pits before the start to switch tyres for the dries.
Yeah,
And
that was where they got given a penalty for, wasn't it? Due to the controversy of, wasn't it the engineer telling
Yeah.
Magnussen to go into the pits on the formation lap or something?
I can't remember. I think it might have been Kvyat that got the penalty, because they all came in, and it was some stupid rule that like the engineer can't tell you what to do on the formation lap. And I think Kvyat asked a question like, shall we pit? And they said yeah, whereas if you'd gone, we're pitting, they wouldn't have got a penalty. But I think if you put Schumacher and Mazepin in that situation, maybe Schumacher can hold off and get some points. But I think with the amount of battling that Mazepin would have had to do in that situation, he would have definitely had at least a collision at some point.
Yeah, because that was Magnussen's only point scored last season.
I feel like it might have been Grosjean's as well, but it wouldn't.
Uh,
I'm not.
I know Grosjean had more points than Magnussen. I think they had 3 in total. Grosjean had 2 and Magnussen had 1. Let me just check.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me though if next season they didn't score any points.
Yeah, so in the Eiffel Grand Prix,
Uh,
Magnussen finished 9th.
okay.
So
Yeah, I just don't see big things for Haas. Hopefully they can like turn it around with the new regs, because otherwise I don't suspect they'll be in F1 for long, because they've not really. They had a few. They had a very strong start. 2016 was good. 2017 was decent. 2018 was their best season, and then they've just kind of been on the ropes since then. But now looking on to 8th place last year was Alfa Romeo, retaining their lineup of Kimi. Don't know why I paused there. Yeah, keeping their lineup of Raikkonen and Giovinazzi. And yeah, I think we pretty much already touched on this, that we think they're going to be battling with Williams over the best of the bad, if that's a thing to call them, best of the back markers. Any more to add to Alfa Romeo? I feel like they're very. I don't know whether it's just because they're at the back. They're just very quiet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I think Alpha's biggest issue at the moment is, unfortunately for Giovinazzi, Kimi does still seem to be their strongest driver, despite now being 41.
Yeah,
So
Giovinazzi. I don't know how he's still.
no, so I think unless he has a lot better season this year, this will be Giovinazzi's final season, unless Kimi decides to retire, in which they might keep Giovinazzi just for that familiarity.
Yeah, I think because obviously with Hasn't Alfa Romeo, they're Ferrari power team, so Ferrari have like a say on which drivers they can have. And I think they should have changed up and put like Schumacher and Raikkonen. I think that would have been an amazing pairing for Alfa Romeo, and then put one of their other young drivers like Eilert or something in the has with maybe I don't know like a Hulkenberg or someone. So they have that you know young person to learn from. Yeah, Giovinazzi came in a few years ago and was like the next person after Charles to be a Ferrari driver, and he's just not performed at all. Um, Apparently, as well, this is another speculation. Uh, their front nose design is obviously quite recognisable. They've got that like kind of like a Red Bull, that snorkel sort of nose. Apparently, they're switching to like a Mercedes style nose this season,
Okay,
which
interesting to see how that would affect the whole car, though.
yeah, obviously this is just speculation. They could just stick with the old one, but if they're making changes like that, they could be looking to sort of challenge the midfield a bit more.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see that.
I don't think we've really got anything more to say about Alfa Romeo. They kind of, that, yeah, a quiet team, I'd put it. So moving on to the start of the midfield, we had Alpha Tauri in 7th place last year. Obviously, having a new driver in Yuki Tsunoda, who is one of the hot talents from F2 last year. Where do we think they're going to place next season? It is also interesting to note before you give your opinions. I mentioned about the pink Mercedes sort of copycat thing. There's something with listed parts that, so because Red Bull supply like suspensions and stuff to AlphaTauri, and Mercedes do it to a Racing Point, well Aston Martin now. They could update their suspension. So last year, AlphaTauri were running with the 2019 suspension from the Red Bull, and they did have the option to change to the 2020 suspension this year, but they're sticking with the 2019 suspension. Not that if that adds any thought to where their performance might be.
Yeah, there was the sort of um I can't remember. I don't know how to explain it, but they sort of decided to turn AlphaTauri into more of a sister team as opposed to a junior team, I think, was the sort of idea. So they were trying to like give more parts from the Red Bull to improve the AlphaTauri. And if it carries on like that and they continue to improve, they could be further up the grid. Um, but you never know. I mean, Gasly was very sure that they could shoot for like sixth in the constructors in 2020. I remember reading an article saying that he was aiming to try and knock Ferrari out of sixth. Obviously, unfortunately, they didn't get it, but I think they were quite close. Um, so I mean, who knows? I think they're not obviously. AlphaTauri is never going to be as good as Red Bull because then it would just look really wrong. So it'll never be as good, but I think they're going to try and bring AlphaTauri up as much as they can.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if AlphaTauri sort of follow that Red Bull sort of front nose design. And I know Red Bull had a very like innovative front suspension. it'd be interesting if they sort of follow that, because yeah, I think this year they're gonna do well. You know, we had Gasly do really well last year. He was arguably for the first half of the season the star performer, and I think Tsunoda is going to be incredible to watch. I don't know if you guys, well, Billy, you said you watched a bit of F2 last year. Do you rate Tsunoda? Do you think he's going to do well in the AlphaTauri?
Yeah, that was going to be my sort of second bold prediction. Is that Tsunoda's actually going to beat Gasly
That
this
is very
year in
bold.
the drivers championship. I'm not going to say by a lot, but I do think that his driving style will just naturally help him getting used to the car. It's watching him is very almost Daniel Ricciardo-esque. It's very much last of the late breakers and sort of that driving style. So I reckon if the car's up to it, he'll get some decent positions.
Yeah, because I kind of like watched F2 sort of on and off, but wasn't he was in the title fight, wasn't he? I know it came down to like Eilert and Schumacher, but wasn't he third in the
He got
championship
third.
last year?
He got third overall, yeah.
And that was his first season in F2. Wasn't he quite unlucky with some reliability or like getting involved in?
Yeah, he did have a few unfortunate races, but I think it might have been Bahrain normal rather than the short track. He started something like 18th on the grid and got all the way up to P3 to
Yeah,
then
I
start.
think I watched that
Yeah,
one.
it was an amazing drive, that. And if he can sort of show that straight away in F1, I reckon he won't be in the AlphaTauri for too long.
Yeah, I have big things because I feel like it's been a while since Red Bull have had a star, driver. Obviously, they had for years. They had Vettel come up through the ranks. Then they had Ricciardo, Verstappen, and then the past few. Obviously, we've had Kvyat, who did go to Red Bull, didn't really make a splash. Um, Gasly, again, sort of the same thing. Obviously, in the top AlphaTauri, even he was probably arguably better than he was in the Red Bull. And then Albon, obviously, getting kicked out this year, not having a seat, having to go off to DTM. So hopefully they can learn their mistakes, not rush Tsunoda into that seat, and help him develop as a driver so he can be that next, Verstappen when he leaves, or follow in the footsteps of all these other great Red Bull drivers that have come up through the ranks. Where do we think they're going to come, sort of constructors wise? Do you think they're going to improve on their 7th of last year?
I think it all depends on how that Ferrari engine improves. I think that's going to be the biggest deciding factor for a lot of teams' finishing positions in this coming up season. Is just purely, do Ferrari return to where they are, and then the Ferrari powered teams also then get back to being competitive, or yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest factor, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I'm predicting them to get 7th place again. I think it seems like pretty much every season they have this peak of performance. I know we talked about it in the 2020 season review, but like they sometimes turn up to a weekend and they have the potential to be the best of the rest car, but then they have so many races where they're just not there. Like I remember 2019, Gasly got 4th at Bahrain, which was mental, but then the rest of the season he was kind of like nowhere. Moving on to that team though, it is Ferrari, finishing 6th last year. Obviously, a big sort of amount of their performance will come from their engine and how much better they can get it. I've heard reports that for this year they're trying to make their engine just like solid and powerful, not trying to do like anything sneaky or anything new. But then they have a separate department at Ferrari which are looking at loopholes or ways that they can be a bit cheeky and innovative. So I reckon Ferrari are going to get their act together this year. Obviously, they've got Charles, who's, incredible. I know Brenda absolutely loves Leclerc. Best driver of the grid, isn't he?
Definitely.
Debatable. I'm
And
currently watching the best driver on the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah, the McLaren car launch is now live.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm just watching that out the corner of my eyes constantly.
so if we're a bit distracted, forgive us. But then they've also got Sainz, who interesting move to Ferrari. Obviously, everyone wants to be a Ferrari driver, but when you have like Schumacher, who you'd probably say in a year or two's time will be in that Ferrari, do you think that's the right move for Sainz to go to Ferrari? And how do you think he's going to compare with Leclerc?
Personally, I don't think it is a great move long term. Because obviously next season might be a bit of a write off still. 2022, no one knows what's going to happen. But I feel no matter how he performs, really, Leclerc's going to be has already got that long term contract, and Mick Schumacher has been said on multiple occasions to be the future for them. That's who they want in their car. So I feel it's sort of a little bit like no matter how well he does, it's never going to be a viable option to be there for a long period of time, providing Mick Schumacher shows that he can actually control an F1 car like they think he'll be able to. So I reckon 2 or 3 seasons max, maybe a bit longer, but unlikely is his sort of lifespan at Ferrari. So then it's sort of a case of where does he go after that?
Yeah, I think
I
it's.
mean,
Oh, go on, Brenda.
I think it's actually going to be quite a strong pairing between the two of them. Obviously, Sainz has shown that he's got the speed to be able to put like the McLaren on the podium. He's done that twice now, I think, in 2 separate seasons. And some standout um, races with Toro Rosso and Renault. So even though he's sort of jumped around the grid a little bit, he's still been able to perform well in all the different cars that he's driven. I don't think the lineup is Ferrari's problem. I think this year Ferrari have sort of got to stop dragging their heels and sort of get it together a little bit and put that car together in the right way so they can get back up to the front. Just even third in the constructors would be sort of an improvement. And I mean, I found out that Ferrari make the most money of the entire grid. So there isn't really a reason why they shouldn't be able to put their car in the right place again. Obviously, 'cause they've been there since the start. They've been there for every single championship race. So I don't know. Um, I don't think their lineup is the problem. I think it's probably going to be their car. They've got to work on the car and get that up to speed more than they've got to get the drivers up to speed.
Yeah, I think the pairing is one of the strongest they've had in a long while. Um, I think Sainz has made. Obviously, everyone wants to drive for Ferrari, but I think him moving from McLaren is the wrong thing because at the moment McLaren are on the up and up. Not saying that because Ferrari inevitably will return. There's no doubt about that. But will they return in the next 2 years when Sainz is there? Maybe next year. Definitely not this year. I think at McLaren he was more of a team leader. Like a bit like Ricciardo. I think McLaren is the place where he'd sort of found his home in F1. And obviously leaving now to basically play second fiddle to Charles. I know they probably don't have a definite first or second driver, but Charles is their future. Charles is like the person who's going to take them to the next championship. And then I think it was very telling. They had a test day at Fiorano, which is their like personal test track in the 2018 Ferrari, and Mick Schumacher got the same amount of testing time as Sainz, which I think is very, very telling of how they view their future drivers. But I've been optimistic again. I've put them in 4th place for this season. I think they will get their act together. I don't think their engine, will be the best, but I think it will be a big improvement on what they had last year. And I think they're gonna work their way up the grid to 4th. I don't think they're gonna go back to their being a top 3 team just yet, but I think they will be able to be more consistently at the top of the midfield.
Yeah, I hope so.
I want to see Charles up there.
I want to see Shaw on the podium.
I just want to see Daniel and Lando on the podium.
So moving on to 5th place last year, we had Renault, obviously now Alpine, dropping their star driver of Daniel Ricciardo and gaining 2-time world champion Fernando Alonso, keeping Esteban Ocon. Now I think, obviously Renault before has hyped up or looked like they're on the upward trajectory, and then not delivered. I think next year they're going to drop down to 6th in the constructors. I don't think that. I think the whole Alonso move has split people. I don't know what you two think. I feel like some people think that he's going to step in the car and he's going to, drag everything out of it, which we did see in the McLaren. But I don't think he's the silver bullet that a lot of people think he is.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead, Billy.
I've never been a real fan of him, if I'm honest. There's always just been something about him that's I can't really say what it is, but there's something about him that's never really screamed at me. As obviously he's won those 2 world championships with Renault, and he was amazing in those days, his driving. Then he went to McLaren and sort of got outshone by Lewis Hamilton, sort of the rookie on his first season. Then second season, he wasn't at McLaren actually, was he, in 2008, was he?
No, he went back to Renault.
He went back to Renault again, didn't he? And then I feel since, yeah. And then ever since then, he's just sort of jumped around and never really showed any sort of real sort of, I don't want to say chance, but I don't really think he's ever really stood out as the driver that you would go, yeah, he's going to be the one that then wins the championship. He obviously went to the Ferrari and nothing came of that, and then McLaren I feel was his real downfall, just the hopelessness of what they were achieving when they had him in the seat. And then the second he left, bringing in 2 new drivers and instantly jumping up to 5th in the constructors, I think just shows that there was something wrong within the team that was just able to be sorted once he'd left and stopped his quite demanding sort of driving sort of tactics in terms of wanting the control of a lot of the aspects of the team.
Yeah, I think I get what you mean. I feel like he's one of those drivers who it's never his fault. It's always the team's fault, and the team need to provide him a better car. I don't want to say being a team leader because, I think he is, but I think the way he goes about it isn't right. I do disagree a bit with what you said because obviously he didn't get any championships, but I can't remember the exact amount of points, but it's something like if he'd scored 7 more points throughout his career, he'd be like a 5-time world champion. So he's always been close. I think, what was it, in 2007, he was, I think, was he joint second? Or he was only like 1 or 2 points off winning the championship.
But he still finished behind Hamilton, didn't he? Or did I get that wrong? I believe he did.
They finished a joint, I think.
Did they? Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think they both were only one position off, 1 point off, even.
Okay.
And then in 2010, he almost won, but he got stuck behind Petrov at Abu Dhabi. And then in 2012 as well, he was. I think in 2010 I think he was leading up until the last race, or he was went into the last race as championship leader, and the same happened in 2012. So I think he is obviously a great driver, but I think he's not going to be the silver bullet that a lot of people expect, and I think Ocon will maybe do a better job than him, and that's saying something. Like I rated Ocon so high before when he was at Racing Point, but then having that year off, I feel like hurt his progress a lot, because last year he just didn't seem to be the same Ocon that I'd seen before.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know about Alonso. I think I agree with you saying, that he's not going to be um this world champion that's going to come in and just sort of instantly take Renault back to um grabbing consistent podiums. Um, he is a two-time world champion, but he also he's like, with all due respect, he is getting on a bit now, and like we're seeing with Kimi, like when he was with Ferrari, which in 2018 was arguably, or for the first half of the season at least, arguably the best car on the grid. Um, Kimi wasn't really able to do much with the car, and it even reached a point where he he now holds the record for like the longest distance between race wins, which I think his last one was with Lotus. Um,
Yeah,
I
Lotus in
can't remember what year it
2013.
was. Yeah, and then his last win was a USA in 2018. So 5 years between race wins,
That
and
famous,
for yeah,
the famous
for
crofty
like
crow of 1,000 years between his
yeah,
victories.
and for like two for about 2 years that Ferrari was within championship contention, and it wasn't Kimi fighting for it. It was Seb. So um, I think Ocon might um outshine him a little bit and sort of dull down that expectancy that Alonso is going to come in and be back at the front of the grid. Obviously, amazing driver. He won 2 world championships, and you can't take that away from him. That is an amazing achievement. But you've got to think, like, he pulled out in 2018, and maybe that was the right time to stop.
Yeah, yeah, it's a difficult one because they're obviously not going to do, be fighting for the championship this year. So then to put all your eggs into next year when there's no guarantee that anything will happen, I just feel like Renault have other talent, developing, and we've seen before that, teams used to think that, the older, more mature drivers were better, but then there's been a change recently where they're starting to see that, oh no, younger talent is actually, the future. We kind of saw it with Mercedes, where now they're thinking, oh, we don't need a Hamilton. We could, potentially win the championship with Russell. Ferrari's a good example. This is one of the youngest lineups they've ever had, because before they wanted experience. So yeah, I hope he does well, because Alonso on his day is incredible. His race starts are one of the best, but I think it's going to be a rough season for Alonso fans. But moving on to fourth place, we had Racing Point last year, obviously changing to Aston Martin this year, with their new driver lineup of Lance Stroll and Sebastian Vettel. what do we think of this Aston Martin rebrand? Obviously, this year the car won't change an awful lot from last year, and last year they had, arguably the third fastest car. Do you think they will be able to get third this year in the constructors?
I'd like to say no, just because I want McLaren to have secured that spot. But realistically, if Seb could return to sort of what we've seen him do in the past, I want to say that they will take that sort of third place in the constructors.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest one of the biggest points from the whole Aston Martin debate is, do you think Seb will return to, you know, the Seb that he can be, and perform at the
I'd
level
like
that
to
he
think
can?
so. I'd like to think he could.
I don't think he will. I think he's obviously we'd all love to see it, because I think he had such a horrible ending with Ferrari. Getting a phone call just to say, we don't want you after this year. It's quite a horrible way to say goodbye. Um, and I think he does deserve to have a proper send off when he eventually does leave F1. Um, but I don't know. I think if Stroll starts to like outperform him, we're just going to get the same sort of problem where Vettel is sort of um, a bit uncomfortable with the team, and obviously I feel that team is going to be very one-sided still, even though they've got a four-time world champion there. It's still um, Lawrence Stroll's team. Um, so I don't know. I mean, it could work out, and Seb could return to his sort of dominant ways and just be able to um, put that car in a good place every race. But I mean, you never know, and I don't personally. I don't think he will. I think he's been in it for how long now? It's
Why,
been the
2007? I
early
think he had his
2000s.
first race.
Was it that? I swear he was in a BMW Sauber.
Yeah, that was in 2007 because Kubica had his big crash at Canada, and then he replaced him for like one race, and then
Oh
I don't know
yeah.
where I can't remember if it might have been he had like one race, and then in 2008 he moved up B8.
Yeah, well, yeah. Regardless, it's a long time to be in F1, and I think like we're gonna see now, a lot of these sort of veterans, if you will, of the sport are going to start dropping off, and you're going to see sort of the new generation of Formula One drivers sort of coming through. Um, the likes of like Kimi, um, Seb, Alonso, they'll be on the grid for a couple of years, I think, extra. But after that, I think we're going to start seeing them disappear from the grid, and a new generation come through.
Yeah, well, I'm still surprised Kimi's there at this rate. He'll be 65,
Yeah,
still potting around in the Alfa Romeo. I personally hope that Seb, returns to his old ways. When he moved to Ferrari, I wasn't, a massive fan when he was at Red Bull, just because I'm not a big fan of dominance, which is kind of ironic from our tier one season. But like with the Hamilton thing, it's not that I don't. I can see that he's a good driver, but I want to see a variety at the front of the grid. So when he moved to a Ferrari, I thought, this is the time. He can prove himself. Everyone was like, oh, he can only win when he's at the front, which wasn't true in his Red Bull days. And I'm hoping now that he's out of Ferrari, because it can be quite a toxic place, Ferrari. He's back with a British team, obviously Red Bull being Austrian, but their factories in Britain. I think he prefers that, and I think the car last year, and even in 2019, didn't really suit him. So I think if he has that car that suits him, he has the great engine in them as the Mercedes. I think he can perform. I have them as 5th in my standings for this year, purely because I don't think Stroll will be that much of a points bringer home. Obviously, there were at times last year where he looked brilliant, but then he kind of dropped off after his Mugello crash. I think Seb is going to return to sort of more of his old ways, but I just think that Ferrari they're going to sort their engine out, and they have a much stronger lineup to get that 4th position and get those regular points. But I am very excited to see Seb in green. You see these concept arts of racing drivers in their new overalls, and I think him in green overalls and his helmet, like, I love his helmet. It's like a retro design but modern day. I think he's going to look good in that Aston Martin. But now moving on to 3rd place last year, and hopefully they can reveal their car while we're talking about them. We have McLaren. I think McLaren are going to stay 3rd. I think they're going to have a fantastic season this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to have a really good year, and they're going to be able to keep the car where it is, develop it even further, and hopefully make gains towards the front of the grid. I'll let Billy take over now because I can tell he's just dying to talk about it.
Yeah. I want McLaren to be top. I want to say win, but I want top 3, ideally, just for that sort of I don't want to say continued progression, because obviously they finished 3rd last year, but I feel the jump between 2nd and 3rd was so big, it's not a realistic sort of expectation to expect them to get 2nd, unless something really, I say, bad, something shocking happens to either Red Bull or Mercedes in terms of their performance. So yeah, I'd like to see McLaren definitely up there and closing the gap to 2nd with this now new Mercedes power unit that they've grabbed, and then definitely Ricciardo and Lando getting some decent amount of podiums, and I reckon that they'll even get a win this season. It won't be a normal race that they'll pick the win up in, though. It'll be a very, I don't want to say sort of Monza race, because I don't think we'll ever see a race like that again, just because of how sort of, I don't want to say, I don't really know how to describe it, to be honest.
Yeah, like something's going to happen.
Just nuts. There'll be something that happens that does give them the win, but it's not going to be quite as extreme as what happened in Monza. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it, and yeah, I just want them to do well.
Yeah, obviously last year we saw them sort of fighting for that top spot of the midfield. That was something
I will say is they've now just revealed the new car live as I'm saying this now on the live stream. They're now going over it.
Oh mate, I'm delayed.
Is that it? Is it?
Wait, you can't look at it without me.
I'll pause it. Hang on, I'll pause mine.
I'm not.
Wait, I'm at them and they've got like the black tarp over the top of it.
Right, here we go.
Oh no! I swear that was the old one.
Why am I so delayed?
This is the new one. Yeah, they've got the black thing over it.
Oh, okay.
I swear, yeah, I swear that was the old one.
My bad. I thought that was the new one. The way that
I was going to say it looked very similar to last year. If that was the new one,
I was thinking that. I was like, they haven't really changed much, but okay, right, here we go.
I think this is the new one. If they do reveal it.
What? So they've just taken the black tarp off, and that's the new one. No, that must be the new one.
No, the black tarp stuff is still on there.
Oh, see, it's come off for me. Oh, I've gone from being behind to being ahead.
Oh no!
Oh,
Right, here we go.
wait,
They're now pulling it off.
is that a new car? I can't tell.
I mean, it looks very
Yeah,
similar to last year, but
that
It is
was
obviously it
very,
will do.
those little cinematic sort of shots we were seeing. That is the new car.
it is a new car then.
That was the new car. Yeah, it's just
Okay, no
It
bad.
just obviously
No
looks
bad.
very similar because they transition most of it over. But I mean, the orange and blue, I love.
yeah. It's one of my favourite liveries on the grid next to Red Bull.
Yeah, I think I preferred it when they had the sort of like geometric triangles in the 2019 one. But there's something about this like matte. It's almost like matte orange and then like a sort of metallic-y blue, which I really like. Oh yeah, it must be the new car because they've got the new floor on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
is
This isn't really that great for those of you listening on the podcast
it?
currently, but we're enjoying it. So
It is nice. It is a nice looking car. I thought it was going to be a bit more like they were going to have a completely different design, like in terms of the back of like the engine cover and things like that. Um, because it's very, very similar to last year's car.
But I suppose that we're going to get that
Um,
quite a lot because not a lot's really changing.
yeah,
yeah,
'cause a lot of development has been frozen, hasn't it? I think if I'm right in saying McLaren are the only team that have been allowed to design a new chassis for this season
Yeah,
because of that new engine going in.
yeah,
They've obviously been given rights or the permission by the FIA to design a new chassis because the previous engine wouldn't have fitted, or the new engine wouldn't have fitted on that previous one.
yeah. I think there was something to do with their tokens that they're only allowed to spend a certain amount of tokens, but McLaren basically had theirs taken away so they could do the engine swap. I think aerodynamic wise, you can do whatever you want, but like chassis wise and like suspension sort of wise, everything has to sort of stay the same.
just reading all the comments of people on the live stream, everyone's like slating them for having the same livery as last year.
I mean, they've got a little blue nose bit.
Nobody's happy about it.
I'm happy, so I don't care.
Ah, that's funny.
I
Anyway,
just want, I just want to give credit to Josh for his impeccable timing of writing this document.
yeah,
Of
no, that's good.
once we get to the end of McLaren, the reveal happening.
Like, I was waiting for us to like move on and be like, talk about Mercedes and Red Bull, and then them reveal the car, and then also have to go back. But that is perfect timing. Thank you, McLaren. Obviously, just in sync. But yeah, I think McLaren are going to have a fantastic year. I think they're going to sort of bridge that gap between midfield and top teams. So I do feel like they're going to be kind of in a world of their own. But that being said, oh, pardon me, when Mercedes and Red Bull do have issues, or there's a collision at the front, McLaren should be there to pick up the win. And I agree. I think they're going to get a win. I think having Ricciardo on board is a great decision. I think that's going to be his home. I so want to see McLaren return to championship winning ways next year with Ricciardo, because it's going to be such a shame. There's so many good drivers that just aren't going to win championships, and it would be such a shame, for a Ricciardo to not win a championship when he's arguably top 3 on the grid at the moment. And now moving on to the final two. We're going to start with Red Bull, who was second last year. I'm putting the bold prediction, and it's very bold because I know in my head it's not going to happen, but my heart wants it, that Red Bull
I
are
like
gonna win the championship.
see. I do like that prediction, and I'm not brave enough to say it, but I'm hoping it.
I don't know what it is. Obviously, Mercedes stopped development fairly early on last year, which isn't a good sign. But I think it doesn't really matter, because with Red Bull continue developing, a lot of that will probably get transitioned over to this year. And
Yeah, did I hear right when I think it was Christian Horner did an interview towards the end of last season, or might have even been after the season ended, saying that they're bringing 40% of last year's car over to this year, but the rest will be new development.
yeah, that'll be very interesting. I hope they can sort out all that, because normally they have like a bit of a slow start to the season, then pick it up. But if they, I am praying that they come out the doors and like win at Bahrain and like show
Yeah,
that Mercedes aren't going to have an easy run of it this year. Even, you know what? Even if Mercedes still win the championship, as long as they have a challenge to get it, and it's not,
yeah,
oh, we've done the first race, Mercedes won by half a minute, championship over.
yeah. See, Bahrain's never typically been their strong track, though, has it? Obviously, it's quite a power-hungry track, which is usually suited Mercedes over Red Bull. So, a little thing to add to what you were saying about your bold prediction. Do you still think that it's going to be Hamilton winning the championship, but it will just be Red Bull drivers in that second and third position and like Bottas behind them? Or do you reckon that it's actually going to be close for the drivers' championship as well?
So we've got a bit of a predictions things as well to do in a bit, but in my heart and a little bit in my head, I think Verstappen can get the championship purely
Okay.
because I think, I don't know, I feel like, not that Hamilton's lost his fire, but I feel like Max has developed into a driver that is capable of winning a championship, and he's young enough to have that fire in him. And I think if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Max to like topple Hamilton. But that being said, Mercedes are obviously going to be strong. I think at the very least it will be Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez, and then Bottas fourth. I think Perez is the key to some of their success this year, because he's like
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, they've been lacking that number two driver ever since Ricardo left.
yeah, and you know, there's obviously talk about, you know, oh, the Red Bull's just suited to Verstappen, blah 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 blah. But it's more of a thing that Verstappen is just a versatile driver who can adapt his driving style, which is something I feel both Gasly and Albon lacked, because they're obviously, you know, chucked in at the deep end. Whereas you have Perez, who I can't even remember when he started, but he has so many years of experience. He's driven so many different cars. You know, he's driven Saubers, McLaren, Force India's Racing Points. You know, when they were good and when they were bad. And I just feel like he's going to be that second driver that Red Bull need. He's gonna win a few races when, you know, Verstappen can't. And I think that combination is going to be a real headache for Mercedes when, you know, maybe they can't beat Hamilton every week, but they can at least beat Bottas. Or at least, we kind of saw at Abu Dhabi where Albon was actually fourth and he was making life difficult for the Mercedes. I think Perez will do that, but will obviously be further up and closer, if you get me.
Yeah.
Okay. See, I think Perez and Bottas is going to be an interesting pairing, in as much as we've seen Perez and Ocon butt heads before, and I wouldn't necessarily say that Ocon is as aggressive a driver as Max Verstappen is. So I feel that if those two start having to compete for the results within their team, that it might maybe mess them up slightly in a few races, and it will take a collision that will take either one or both of them out between each other before they're really told they're not allowed to race. Obviously, I know Red Bull have never really. I said I don't want to say they've never allowed them to, because I know when Ricardo and Verstappen were there, they used to push each other to the limit. But I think that Red Bull will need to put something in place that stop them racing each other.
Yeah, just to build upon your pushing to the limit as well, I think that's something that is going to help them as well, because Verstappen's not had this second driver to really push him, and neither has Hamilton. But if he's got a Perez who's, looking to maybe beat him in qualifying, maybe beat him in a couple of races, that will push Max Verstappen to like turn on beast mode, if you will, and just go for it and show like, I don't know, go like Super Saiyan and show how good he is, and then that will be enough to beat Hamilton.
Yeah, sort of stop that sort of dead air that he seems to be sat in.
Yeah.
Sort of when it gets to 2/3 into the race, if it's been a boring race, no safety car, stuff like that, and he's sort of 15, or I say 15, sort of usually about 8-9 seconds behind the Mercedes, and then sort of 15 seconds in front of any other car, and just sort of sat in that sort of dead space where he's got no one really to challenge him or push him.
Yeah, I hope with all my heart that Red Bull can end this Mercedes dominance. But realistically, it's probably going to be another disappointing year. Brynda, what do you think? Do you think Red Bull has what it takes? Obviously, your team from season 1.
I mean, they showed great pace in Abu Dhabi at the end of the season. Whether that was due to Mercedes turning their engines down for reliability, or whether that was just a sign of what was to come. I honestly don't know. I'm excited to see, because like you said, I want them to sort of put an end to this Mercedes dominance. Because this last year especially, they've really pulled away from the rest of the field. So yeah, I would like them to be able to push them. I think that I mean, I'm not sure. I think they're going to equal Mercedes. I don't think they're going to be better, but I don't think they're going to be worse. I think they're going to equal them, and sort of there's going to be a duel between them, and then it's a bit like whoever has like the least incidents and things like that. It's just that's going to be the technicality that puts the different constructor on top.
I will 100% take that. As long as it's just not like oh well, we're 3 races in and Mercedes have already wrapped up the constructors, and it's most likely that Hamilton will win another title. Even if they do win, Hamilton wins 8 titles, and they get the constructors. As long as it's like, maybe a last race or two, and that there's an actual challenge there, because they've never been challenged in the turbo hybrid era. I know there was, Ferrari in 2017 were close, but I don't think they really had the engine. And then in 2018, they obviously had Seb making mistakes. I just want someone to challenge them, because especially I feel like when you put Mercedes under pressure, because they've not been under pressure. We've seen it in the 2019 German Grand Prix when things weren't going their way. In Sakia, where they kind of put pressure on themselves with the stacking the pit stops. I feel like when you put pressure on Mercedes, because they're not constantly under that pressure, there are cracks there that can be exploited. But moving on to, we kind of wrap Mercedes in this as well. Do we see any shock surprises from Mercedes? Do we think Bottas 4.0 is going to win the title?
No.
It'll probably have an amazing Bahrain race, and then everyone will be like, oh no, Bottas is here to win the championship, and then
Bottas 4.0.
Yeah, and then it'll just fall back and not really appear for the rest of the season. I don't know if there's much more to talk about Mercedes. They're kind of a bit boring.
No, I don't think there is either, to be honest.
I'm trying to think. I just maybe if, this engine issue that they have, there's actually something there that is wrong, spice it up a little bit. If it's just another season where it's with Mercedes 1, 2, and then Red Bull 3, 4, and then, it's just gonna be a bit boring. But I'm hoping with all my heart. I used to make bets with someone in school who was a fan of F1 every year, and I'd be like, this year Mercedes aren't going to win, and every year I'd lose the bet. So I really hope this year it changes. But that's kind of like the preview bit sort of wrapped up. So now we're going to look into predictions. Some of them we've touched upon. So our first prediction is Drivers' Champion. Obviously, I'm going with Max. Fingers crossed. Can't wait to be disappointed. Who are you two going for? Who do you think is going to win the championship?
I think, unfortunately, it'll be Lewis. I say unfortunately. He'll then be the undisputed all-time sort of highest. So, yeah, I think it'll be Lewis with my head. I hope it'll be either Lando or Daniel.
Imagine there's a madness and Mercedes and Red Bull have lost their second lap advantage and McLaren win every race. That would be a sight to see.
I reckon Latifi's in with a good chance. Possibly Mazepin. I don't know, one of those two maybe. No, I mean, I think Hamilton again is going to be pretty dominant. But I think Max is going to be very close. So I think it'll be one of those two, to be honest. But it's so difficult to tell. Hopefully, Red Bull and Max can close up, and we do see Max as world champion. But we won't know until we get to Bahrain.
Yeah, very true. And Constructors' Champion, I'm going for Red Bull, which I switching on my head a little bit to take away some of the pain of the Mercedes domination. I low-key think, even if Hamilton wins for another championship, that Red Bull could do enough to topple them. I think the fact that they have two strong drivers who can both beat Bottas and, occasionally beat Hamilton might be enough to push them over.
Yeah,
give them
I agree with that.
Yeah, seconded. I agree.
Yeah, but again, I hope that McLaren win it, but more logically would be Red Bull doing so.
I'm surprised Brenda's not come out with, oh wow, George and Latifi are going to win every race.
I'm surprised he didn't say Charles.
Oh yeah. Oh, I can't believe it. If Charles watching now and his biggest fan.
If he's listening, he now knows that even his biggest fan doesn't even believe he can do it.
Yeah. How disappointed Charles will be. I think that's enough to get you out of a Ferrari seat for next season.
Probably.
Yeah, I can't believe you've at least Billy's backing his drivers. He's backing Ricciardo to win. God, what a fake fan you are. Best race. Now this is a bit difficult, obviously, because we haven't seen them yet. But that's the whole point of predictions. Where do we think the best race is going to happen? Oh, I'm going to change it. I'm going to say best weekend, because obviously now we've got the potential of sprint races. I'll go best weekend.
Yeah, so it's a difficult one, to be fair. I've always liked, as my favourite track is usually Austria. But I feel it doesn't, and I say that last year, obviously Lando's podium and stuff like that, but it doesn't usually lend itself to that sort of closer racing once it sort of spreads out a bit. So I'm going to say that the best race will be Silverstone, just because it will usually have, or Silverstone, because it will usually have a safety car at some point. Sort of close the pack up a little bit, and then sort of a last 10 lap sprint to the finish, and anything can happen.
All right, Brenda's about to say Monaco.
No, I reckon Monza is going to be quite interesting. We've had, if I'm correct, 3 different winners in the last 3 years. Obviously
Yeah.
that's slightly by chance. But we've had, it was Hamilton, then Leclerc, obviously, and then Gasly. And if we get like another crazy race like we did last year, which fingers crossed we do, um, it could it could be really good, especially as well. They're introducing the sprint races or looking at introducing them, so that could also change up a bit as well. Um, so yeah, I'd probably have to go with Monza.
Yeah, I think, and even that year that Hamilton won, Raikkonen was in the bidding to win, and Vettel could have won if he didn't spin. Um, I'm gonna go with, I think Bahrain. The first race is going to be an absolute worldie. Bahrain has given us some good races before, and I think a bit of off-season rust, not everyone being fully fully used to their cars yet, fully used to the new tyres. I think Bahrain is going to be a mental first race. I've always been an advocate for having Bahrain as the first race. I think Australia's only like hyped up because it is the first race. The track itself is a bit meh. So I think Bahrain or Brazil with the sprint race. Brazil normally puts up good races, and if there's, fingers crossed, some hype or tension because of a championship battle going on, that would be an added little nicety for Brazil. Rookie of the season. Obviously, last year we only had Latifi as the rookie, so he won that. But this year we got Schumacher, Mazepin, Tsunoda. You can't really count Alonso, although he's counted as a young driver technically for some reason. Who do we think out of those three is going to be the best rookie, or the rookie of the
I
Mazepin.
season?
think Tsunoda.
Did you just say Mazepin?
Maybe.
Oh, well, we say
I
maybe
think
Brenda, I say.
Tsunoda. Yeah, let's get him out of that seat for next season. Get Riceman to put in a transfer straight away. Transfer request straight away. Get him out. Right. On a serious one, I'm going to say it'll be Tsunoda, purely because I don't think Haas are going to have the car to really show what their drivers can do. So I think it's going to be sort of Tsunoda's prize to lose, opposed to theirs to win.
Yeah, I get what you mean. But I think regardless, Tsunoda is going to have an epic season. I feel like, yeah, it is his to lose. Schumacher could potentially do well, but then I feel like it's going to be a bit like a George, like even worse than a George. So he can outperform that car so good, but it might only equate to 19th or 18th on the grid, which obviously isn't very high profile, if you get me.
No.
Brenda, are you going to stick with your Mazepin prediction?
I don't know. I'm thinking about it.
You're genuinely serious, aren't you? That you think Mazepin will get rookie of the season?
Oh, his aggressive driving style is so good.
No, to be honest, I think Tsunoda is probably going to have the best chance. He's in the best car out of all of them, and he's shown that he's got better pace. Uh, over sort of Mazepin, even though Schumacher won the Formula 2 championship, he's in a worse car. And I think that AlphaTauri is going to be pretty quick, to be honest. So I think, yeah, to be honest, probably Tsunoda for rookie of the year.
Alright, just to interrupt quickly. I was just going through Instagram while we're doing the podcast, and with all that backlash you were saying on the McLaren chat about it looking the same, I've just scrolled across the office picture where it's like corporate needs you to identify the differences between these two pictures, and it's the 2020 McLaren and the 2021 McLaren. That's quite funny. That's made me chuckle. What's next? Most improved team. I am going to go for. I'm going to go for Williams, but
That
purely
was going to
because
be my response.
they're starting at a lower grade. Either that or maybe AlphaTauri.
Yeah,
I would say
yeah,
Williams as
maybe.
well.
I'm going to go for Williams though as my sort of definitive answer.
Well, that's a nice group decision there that we made. Most improved driver. I'm going to open this out to you guys first.
I mean, I'm not really sure he can improve because he's already the perfect driver, but I will go for Daniel Ricciardo.
I'll see now. Now Brenda's going to be like, oh no, Charles is the most improved driver.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think Charles, he made a few mistakes. He's learned, and I think, he's going to take that into account.
And it's funny
he's
because you're
going
not even joking.
I'm not.
Neither am I.
So we got Ricardo and Charles. I'm going to go for. Oh, it's so tough. No, I might do a Bottas, I think he's going to win the championship. I'm going to go Ocon.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if that's just because I think he's going to do better than Alonso and that will make him look better, if you get me.
Actually, my serious answer for most improved driver, I think, will be Vettel. Because I feel if he doesn't
yeah, that's
improve,
true.
then
That's
he'll
true.
be out. I can't see him sticking around for another season if he has another season as bad as he had last. So I think most improved will have to be Seb, or he'll be out of F1.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Now my answer seems a bit wrong. I'm just not. I've absolutely bottled my being a huge Vettel fan. Biggest disappointment, Fernando Alonso. I reckon he's gonna have a torrid season.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I'm going to go for either Alonso, just being Alonso, and just or just Mazepin.
Oh no, actually, I've got a different one. Biggest disappointment is that Mercedes will win the championship again, and Hamilton will win an 8th title.
Oh, I thought you meant most disappointing driver, not just biggest disappointment overall.
I mean, we can do either, really. Well, let's do both. Most disappointing driver, I think Alonso. We got Mazepin or slash Alonso. Actually, I should say Charles. Really, I think Charles is going to be pretty disappointing.
Oh wow!
I think he's going to get absolutely beaten by Sainz.
Yeah, Sainz will get first almost every race, I reckon. Meanwhile, Charles will be lucky to sort of get that 10th, 9th position, find a few points at the bottom.
Charles will be like me on a wheel, just constantly spinning.
Oh yeah, I mean, to be fair, I reckon that Ricardo's going to struggle and Lando's just going to beat him every single time.
See, Ricardo's my favourite driver, but Lando's my second favourite.
Yeah, that's the problem.
It's not a massive problem for me, if I'm honest. When Ricardo, not that he ever will, because he'll go on like Kimi, just never retire. But when he does, Lando is then taking his place as my favourite driver. So, to be honest, even if Norris then has an absolute stormer of a season and thrashes Ricardo, it's not going to be a down point for me. It will just mean Ricardo has something to improve upon for 2022.
So that's biggest disappointing driver. Most disappointing moment.
Most disappointing moment?
Yeah.
Just biggest disappointment over like the entire season.
Yeah, it could be like Mercedes winning the championship, which is mine. It could be.
See, I don't think Mercedes will win the constructors though. Again, I think Hamilton will still get drivers, but I do seriously think that Red Bull, with two strong drivers, if their car is where they hope it will be, could take the constructors from them.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But this is what I'm saying, is that I'm hoping with everything that they can, but I know I'm going to be disappointed when they don't.
Yeah, I understand. So, yeah, I think I'll have to agree with you on that one. That would be the most disappointing moment.
I think my one, which I support McLaren like a lot, and they're sort of rise back to the top. But I think if there was going to be a big disappointment, and I'm not saying that this is going to happen, but if it did happen, I think it would be the biggest. Is that if they all of a sudden, they just messed it completely up.
Oh, they dropped back the grid with this new engine, and yeah,
they just completely dropped back from where they are now.
He's just saying that to get at you, Billy. Don't listen to him.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I didn't bring that one up as my biggest disappointment because I've internally screamed at the thought of that for many months. Just the idea of my two favourite drivers, my favourite team, just slowly working backwards it doesn't bear to think about. It'd be like being Brenda with Leclerc and Ferrari. So
I don't want it to happen, but if for any reason, I don't think it will. But if for any reason it does, I think that will be even worse than Mercedes winning the championship again.
Yeah, I might end up crying myself to sleep on quite a few occasions if that does happen.
And then the final prediction: shock of the season. This could be like a bit of
when
news. A
Daniel Ricciardo wins the Drivers' Championship.
You're really betting on him winning, aren't you?
Daniel or Lando. I'm not too honest.
I'll take any of them.
Bothered, to be honest. Yeah. As long as it's either Lando. I say Lando, Max and George are then my sort of joint third for favourite drivers. Then after that, I don't really have any preference. So any of those top four doing well, I'm happy.
And what about you, Brenda? What do you think is going to be a shocking thing that happens in the season?
Mazepin wins a race, I reckon.
But how do you reckon he'll win it? Do you reckon he'll have a detonation button and everyone's tires explodes, but his?
Probably through everyone else DNFing and him being the only car left on track, I imagine. But
rather than being made out of carbon fibre, just have his car made out of plated steel.
Yeah. So
if anyone touches his car, they fall apart, and he just drives off like nothing's happened.
Yeah, exactly.
My shock is a bit more serious. I'm gonna say, I reckon Hamilton will retire at the end of the season.
Okay, see, if we're going for retirements, I reckon Bottas will be left without a seat at the end of the season. He'll have the choice of either going back to Williams or leaving F1. And that's how.
He's such a beta male.
Yeah, but that's if Williams would take him. I'm not sure how much sponsorship Bottas brings with him. And obviously they've got two young drivers of Jack Aitken and is it Roy Nissany? I think the big sponsor carrier.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure
in their young drivers,
not the best.
Yeah, I don't think he's really shown that he's capable of it when he got into the car last season. But I mean, Jack Aitken jumped in more money. That seems to be sort of the driving force currently for a lot of teams. And maybe Jack Aitken promoted up to the Williams for next season, Russell off to Mercedes, and Bottas left without a seat unless Vettel really doesn't perform, and then a seat opens up in Racing Point in Aston Martin.
All right. Well, have we got anything else to add? Or is that pretty much? I think we've pretty much done everything. I think.
One thing I'd like to add, I didn't put it on the sheet, is we've seen it before. The sort of a little bet between us all that we'll revisit at the end of the season. How many times will the commentators call Aston Martin Racing Point?
Oh, and it's
Oh.
Crofty as well, so he'll constantly be doing it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that they'll have mainly stopped it by the fourth race, but I'm gonna say it'll happen in total probably 16 times is my bet.
Far too
Nah,
optimistic, trust me.
I completely can see them in Abu Dhabi being like, oh, and the Racing Point. I mean, Aston Martin. I reckon by after the halfway mark, after the halfway season break, they'll have finished doing it.
Okay.
It will probably have. Are we just doing the race that it happens in?
No, I'm on about in total, whether that's
Qualifying.
practice one, everything. So when they first leave that pit lane in Bahrain, even not even the actual race weekend for practice, like pre-season testing, before that as well. If they say the Racing Point or something like that, that counts towards the tally.
At least probably like over 50 times.
You're going that high, are you? Okay. See, I reckon that it'll happen once or twice a
Crofty.
weekend.
It's Crofty, you got to remember.
I'm not on just about Crofty. I'm on about like total the commentators, whether that's the Channel 4, Sky.
Crofty will probably do it like 16 times in a weekend.
Yeah, I do agree with that actually. I'll say that I'll stick with my original of 16 to keep it fair. So
Wait. Let me pick this out.
We're just going to go in the middle.
I'm going to go slap bang in the middle. 33?
You really have got in the middle, haven't you?
I think that's the middle.
okay,
When do you think they'll have stopped doing it by?
like I said, I reckon after the fifth race, the majority of it will have stopped. There might be the very slightest slip up every now and then, but I
mean,
think race 5 it will be mostly done.
to be honest, they've completely changed the car livery. I think that was part of the problem, is that the car livery hadn't changed that much. Obviously, if
That's why
Mercedes
I've
changed the
gone
name,
quite a low
Oh,
yeah,
answer.
now you're saying
That's
it's
why
They've
I've
changed-
gone
a
quite
sensible
low.
thing.
That's
They've-
why I went low. I wasn't going
Yeah.
to bring it up because I didn't want you to think of that point, but
Oh,
yeah, that's why I
no.
went low.
they've completely changed the livery. So you're going to see, when you look at it, you're going to see green. You're not going to see pink like usual. So you're not going to think of Racing Point when you see it.
Oh, Brenda, why couldn't you have gone first?
I'm sorry, you didn't ask me first.
I've absolutely messed up there.
So there we go. We're sorted. Everyone's submissions have now been counted. So
You have to write that down.
It's alright, I just won't upload this podcast and then no one will ever know.
see, to be honest, I might have just made a little work for myself because now I've now got to make sure I keep a tally of every time Racing Point are called or Aston Martin are called Racing Point.
Yeah, good luck
So-
watching all the sessions.
Yeah. The second it goes over 16, I'll stop keeping count. So don't worry, I'll win.
Alright, so that has been the 2021 season preview / predictions / betting on how many times Aston Martin will be called Racing Point. I so almost said how many times Racing Point will be called Aston Martin then. It's already happening. I hope you enjoyed as always. Hope you're always staying safe. And yeah, if you're still listening, thank you. We appreciate the support. And we shall catch you next week for a podcast that I don't know what we're doing on yet. See you then.